Good morning mga katribo. It's Wednesday, it's August 2, 2023. Welcome to another episode of Daily Tribune Street Talk, where we discuss important matters to each of us. This is Gigi Arcilia.
Good morning, Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I'm Chito Lozada. We're live on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now on YouTube.
In this morning's episode, not much introduction. We are joined by the Department of Energy Secretary, Raphael Lotilla.
Good morning, Sec Lotilla.
Good morning, Chito, and good morning, Gigi.
Yes, good morning, Secretary.
we're
Welcome.
Happy to be here.
Yes, it's an honor for us to have a cabinet member joining us on Street Talk.
And we have a lot of questions.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we start off then?
Yeah. So let's start from the lighter ones.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, there was a lot of talks that you were nominated by Mr. Chiquiamco, Calixto Chiquiamco, as a chief, to be the
Chief Justice
Chief Justice
of the Supreme Court.
Yeah?
But you
Yeah,
refused the
but you-
nomination. Why is that so, Sec?
Well, that was a long time ago, and I thought at the time, you see, that given the context of the Philippines, it is best to retain the tradition of having the most senior Associate Justice appointed as Chief Justice of the Court, because otherwise I thought that those who would be aspiring to become Chief Justice would then be at odds among each other and would carry
May I
favor.
ask, Sec, how young were you then when you were nominated?
I don't even remember what when that was. But that was the assessment that I made.
It was before you became Energy Secretary.
No, after I was secretary from 2005 to 2007, so it must have been some time after that. This was when Justice, I think Justice Carpio was being considered.
I see.
Yeah.
So that was the time. Okay. So you have a friend, Secretary, former Inquirer columnist and a colleague in the Philippine Commission. His name is Benjamin
It's Benji.
Pimentel. And he marveled in a column that he wrote in 2012 that you had occupied top positions in the government, serving 3 presidents, but you didn't even own a house. And
even
you
a
didn't
TV.
even own a car nor a TV. In fact, he said that you led such a frugal lifestyle that you earned a Meralco designation as a lifeline customer for consuming less than 100 kilowatt hours of electricity a month.
That's
He
an
said
achievement.
that in response to his question, you sent him an email saying that saying, quote and unquote, I'm not homeless, but I don't have a house or a condo, nor a TV. Is this still true today, Secretary?
Well, I like to think that I still have a vow of poverty, but this time I say that it's Jesuit standards of poverty, not 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 something else. No, kidding aside. Well, at the time I was in the university before I became secretary, and so I was living in the walk-up apartments of the university for the staff, and therefore living on the highest floor allowed me to the luxury of not having to use air conditioning. I had no time for TV, and so I tried to keep a small carbon footprint even then. I mean, if we have to talk about
That prepared you
sustainable
for that.
sustainable lifestyles, right? Then the best way to do it is to live it, not just talk about it.
Walking your talk, kumbaga.
Sure.
Okay,
And there's
Chica.
about energy security, sir. Recently, the president said that the path could be through the renewable energy. Would that be the case with the Department of Energy in
No,
terms of energy mix?
well, we get our directions from the top, right? As and even as we give our inputs, that the president is clear on his direction that we have to work for the long-term energy security of the country. And security in me translates into several things. One, of course, is to the extent that we can be dependent on indigenous power rather than imported energy, because we are if we rely on imported sources of energy, then that means that we will be vulnerable to supply constraints as well as to variabilities or spikes in the cost of power or energy as a whole. So our energy dependency on imported fuel is quite high. So almost 60%.
60.
Yeah, so 56% to 60% of our fuel, whether for power or for other energy uses, is imported, and that's in the case of fuel. That's almost 98% for oil for fuel used in transport. So these are things that that's one. The second aspect of security, of course, is the ability for the energy system, including electricity, to respond to sudden changes in supply. Like, for example, when we have extreme events like typhoons and earthquakes and so on. So our ability to get back to normal is another aspect of energy security. So these things are therefore evolving, because the challenges are constantly also evolving. So look at what happened in the last typhoon in the north. So the flooding that occurred and the destruction of the distribution and transmission lines. So we've got to constantly work at this. We can't let rehabilitation or repair fatigue set in. But in a country that is hit by 20 to 24 typhoons a year, then you can imagine what successive typhoons can exact on the resiliency of not only the population but of the responders themselves. So if those who are expected to respond are the ones who are victims themselves, then we're going to have problems, right? So for instance, in northern Luzon, just as a recent example, the ones who are expected to repair the lines are themselves victims of the typhoon. So we had to bring people from all over, from the rest of the country, as near to the north as possible. So whether Tarlac, Nueva Ecija, even Meralco, all of the electric cooperatives and distribution utilities contributed to sending task forces to help restore power in the north. So it's the same story that we see whenever, for example, what happened in Cebu some time back, was that last year or the year before last?
Yeah.
So these are different aspects of energy security. Now, one way of addressing this, of course, is diversification of sources, and primarily indigenous, and that's where renewable energy comes in.
Sec, ano lang, for the benefit of our viewers, you were mentioning about indigenous and imported. Ano-ano tong mga indigenous, and what are this that fall under the imported?
Well, the indigenous ones, we have, whether it's in the upstream, no? So oil and gas, we have some indigenous. So Malampaya is indigenous. And that's why one of the first things that the president did was to see to it that we were able to extend the service contract for Malampaya so that we can already start exploring in the near fields, no? Next to Malampaya. So that's talking about the upstream. But relative to our neighbors in the Southeast Asian region, we are not as gifted with fossil fuel deposits like oil, gas, and even coal as our neighboring countries. So for coal, we import a lot, for example, from Indonesia. So all of these, all the indigenous ones, for example, the coal from Simirara is, and to a certain extent, from Cebu and from Zamboanga, account for only a small percentage of the things that we can, of the coal that we can use. Whereas if you talk about renewable energy, so if it's solar, if it's wind, if it's, well, ocean technologies we are not using extensively right now, but hydro. So all of these are renewable in the sense that the supply doesn't get depleted. And we also have geothermal. So all of these are renewable energy sources. They're available locally, and that's why we call them indigenous. And therefore, we have more control over supply and price. So for instance, in the case of Malampaya, the Malampaya gas has been historically lower than the international prices for liquefied natural gas. So that's because it's found in the country, and there is a formula that has been agreed upon way back when the gas to power project was started. The formula for pricing had already been there. So it has been relatively stable over the years.
But there are a lot of variables in terms of the use of renewable energy. We had Representative Marco Anco as a guest previously, and he said that in terms of reliability, renewable energy is way below compared to other sources.
Well, because of its variable character, it is indeed true that you can't fully rely on renewable energy on a 24-hour basis. So you need, for example, balancing energy from other sources, and then you also need energy storage systems. So you can
The batteries.
And other technologies available. So you can then store energy while during the off-peak hours, and then release them during the peak hours. So the pump storage facility of CBK, the Kaliraya, Botolan, Kalayaan, for example, is one example of a pump storage where you you pump water to the lake up in Kaliraya during the off-peak hours, and then release it during the peak hours when we need the water most. No? So these are there are new technologies also that are developing as far as energy storage is concerned. But we should be open to every type of technology. You mentioned nuclear. Precisely, the role of government is to set standards, whether standards for safety, standards for efficiency. But we should be open to all alternatives with a preferential bias for indigenous sources of
So the
energy.
secretary said it clearly, Chito. But we're going to take a break, secretary. But after the break, we'll be asking you where are we in terms of energy security. We'll ask for
Primarily nuclear.
we'll ask for you to rate the energy security on a scale of 1 to 10. So after this break, this commercial break is brought to you by Angkas, Beat the Traffic. Bayad Center, Bigger, Better, Younger, Bayad, and you can bayad all. Contis Bake Shop and Restaurant, delightfully yours. Globe, atin ang mundo, Meralco, ang liwanag ng bukas.
Yeah. And the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation.
And
SM. Got it
we've
all
got
for
it
you.
all for you. Smart, live more today. Unibank, it starts with you. And Tata Consultancy Services. So, Secretary, we'll go back to the pending question. On a scale of 1 to 10,
yeah.
where are we in terms of energy security?
Well, if 10 represents 100% energy security, and we are importing 56% and so on, so I'd place that around 5 then. But it can even be lower because our ability to respond to extreme events and natural disasters is still needs much improvement.
I see.
So I'll ask you again, Sec.
Yes,
This
yes.
is a follow-up to the energy security scale. So based on the World Energy Trilemma Index produced by the World Energy Council, we rank number 61st out of the 125 countries in the category of energy security. Are we still on the same rank?
I think that's still relatively the same because our reliance actually on renewable energy has decreased over the years. So the last time I was in the department was around 40% renewables. Now we are at 22 or 20 at around 22%. And this is a dynamic figure at this time because, for example, even though the targets for renewable energy were set some time back, the new coal-fired power plants are only coming on stream now, and they are larger units, and therefore they can in proportion their proportion to the mix higher weight than the smaller renewable energy projects, like as you know, even solar has we're using 15% to 16% capacity factor. That means that if you have 100 megawatts solar plant, over a 1-year period, it can actually produce only 15 to 16.
So what's the energy mix right now? Like,
well, the
coal
energy,
is
coal is still our
predominant.
what is this? Is still
The highest.
Our biggest, and
main
that's
source.
the same around the same figures. 56 to 60% would be what is this, fossil fuel
Fossil
based.
fuel.
So our RE is at around 22%.
Malampaya.
Well, Malampaya has contributed less because of the
Less than 20
decline.
right now.
Well, around 20%, but that is below what the peak that we used to have before, which is, it could contribute as much as
30.
30 to 40% even at times, no, of the mix in Luzon. So that's why we had to import liquefied natural gas, Chito,
LNG.
because Gigi, that's why your concern for energy security, right, is there. So first and foremost, we want to assure our people of the stable supply.
Yeah.
But assuring them of stable supply can at times mean higher prices. because we are not a subsidized power sector. It's largely in private hands. It is not controlled and owned by government, and therefore the absence of any subsidy uh, makes for is the reason for the higher price levels. So if you go to Indonesia or Vietnam or Thailand, their policy decision has been to subsidize their energy sector.
So-
But in their case, that's easier because they have ample not indigenous supply of natural gas and even coal in the case of Indonesia. So it's a case where they adopt a different
They have a lot
pricing
of coal.
system for domestic use as against
Commercial.
exports.
Export.
So
Right.
Do you
So
think that some sectors or some section of the energy production should be handled by the government, or
no,
should be,
we
the
have
private
been
sector?
we have been through that, and one of the reforms that was initiated in 2001 was precisely to get government out of the power business and to focus on regulation. You know? And one positive effect of that, of course, is that it freed government resources from having to be poured
to
into
subsidize.
power. Well, not even subsidy, but just the capital capital investments needed to put up new power plants, to put up new transmission lines. These
Correct.
were therefore transferred to the private sector. And ultimately, of course, it is we as consumers who have to pay for that. And that's why it's important to stress the role of energy efficiency and conservation. Having a market-driven energy sector makes us also, and the resulting prices will be higher than in a subsidized setup. Then it also makes us more conscious about the true cost of energy. So to the extent that what I can what is this not use the elevator in the office would be one way of contributing to savings, right? And we in the department we introduced the 4-day work week, where on the 5th day largely our employees are working from home, and that's a way of reducing our own consumption of energy.
Let me ask Sec, how much is the power demand for the entire country?
Well, the peak demand for the country is around 17,000 megawatts, and that's Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. But we project that this is going to be to increase to more than 25,000 by 2028, which is the end of the term of the president. So we've got to have at least 8,000 megawatts to meet the peak demand by 2028. So that's the one that we need to work on over these years. Now, to the extent that right now we have with Ilihan, it's 1,200 megawatts capacity is now back on stream with the importation
LNG.
of liquefied natural gas. Then at least from a security standpoint, it means that what is this? We have that power back now. Now, if we can maintain that, then we have additional power coming renewable and other sources, then we are more or less we face a good prospect of having stable supply up what is this 2024, 2025 and 2026. So the challenge really is how to prepare now for the for 2028 and beyond.
For the demand increase.
For the demand increase, because the gestation period for power projects is long. So you did mention what is this? Some of the the power plants. So we're talking, for example, for what is this? Pump storage hydro plants. So it will take at least 5 to 6 years to construct them. So even if we are going to start working on them now, then it's really in preparation for the demands beyond 2028. And the President's concern and vision is that we don't work only on a short-term or medium-term basis, but look beyond 2028, so that afterwards nobody's going to say, oh, you didn't do anything during your time, that's why we don't have enough power.
Isn't the President considering, the reviving or, make the Bataan nuclear power plant operational, since it's the project of his father?
No, well, definitely what the President has laid out in his first State of the Nation address is that it's time that we re-examine or revisit our nuclear policy, use of nuclear power, and that, however, it's not just simply fixated on Bataan. It's one that looks at what are the alternatives in terms of nuclear energy to the country, and in his various meetings with proponents of nuclear power, his concerns to me can focus on one is safety. So his questions have been searching, and so far as safety standards are concerned. Second is on the suitability of particularly the new nuclear technologies to the archipelagic character of our country, and of course on the price. So right now we see in the United States the first nuclear power plants coming on stream since so many years ago, right?
Yes.
Since ages ago. But so we need to look at these things, and the President has said that we are going to make sure that we adhere to the requirements or standards set by the International Atomic Energy Agency.
That's why.
And these require us to look at the entire life cycle of nuclear power, not just to start with the use, but to address from day one even the disposition of the nuclear waste. So all of these things are being considered even as we talk. The Congress of the Philippines is considering in the House of Representatives the legal and regulatory framework, which is a necessity before we can even make a decision to deploy.
I recall Representative Coangco, when we interviewed him, was saying that the era was slow-walking nuclear energy. Because there are a lot of requirements or things that you should have done, but it's not in there yet.
Yeah. No, one of the requirements of the International Atomic Energy Agency is, of course, a legal and regulatory framework. And that's
Yeah.
why we would like to see Congress, because Congress is our highest policy-making body in the country. And whatever decision Congress makes is one that would reflect a national consensus and would see to the sustainability of a decision on nuclear power across different administrations. Yeah, our actual experience in the past is that
regulation.
when we had a change in administration in 1986, so the decision was suddenly to mothball the entire power plant, and they were citing safety and other considerations. So here, as we move on policies like nuclear and whatever technologies we are going to bring in, it will always be bearing in mind that a number of these things will be operational beyond the life of the current administration, and therefore the sustainability in terms of the political support for those would be important. We can't afford the decisions that have been made in other countries, that after they built it, decided to abort it, and so it would be very expensive.
Slow but sure.
Yeah. So the pace is not dictated by the department alone.
So it's not categorically saying that the government is, just setting aside, the nuclear power, nuclear energy as an alternative to.
Oh, you mean that we're foreclosing?
Yeah.
No, definitely. As I've said,
So it's moving.
it's an openness to it, and we do what we can. So short of starting one in the absence of a legal and regulatory framework, but we continue with the siting studies, with the studies on how we can produce more
So
human
it's a
resources.
legal framework that is required by
Oh, that's one of the 19 requirements.
19. So
Yes,
it's a
yes.
total of 19
Yes,
requirements.
yeah.
So we're
We have to
moving
work.
on.
We have to work on this, and the interagency committees are proceeding with.
Do you have a timeline,
yeah,
Sec,
in the
about
19
in terms of
Well, I don't dictate to Congress, right? So that's
So
some of
that's
the
really up
things
to
that we
them.
have. Well, we need to work with them.
Would that be the first step for Congress to set up the regulatory agency? Or?
Well, it's a necessary step because there has to be a regulatory body in place,
Okay.
which is separate from the
The
agencies
ERC?
that would be concerned with promotion.
so is it different from the ERC?
Now, the Energy Regulatory Commission is price. So, in the case of a regulatory body for nuclear
For
power,
nuclear.
it would be on safety and
So it's
related
So
standards.
it's going to be specific to nuclear.
Yes.
So, Secretary, the President has been, has made 11 foreign trips. Okay, and there are, pledges from investors on different industries, different sectors. So, out of the 11 foreign trips the President has made, how many pledges are there for the energy
Energy
sector?
sector.
Well, there have been a number which have been presented to the President in his foreign trips. One of them, for example, is the one on floating solar in Laguna Lake. So that one
Floating
has,
solar.
What
has
country?
generated.
From what country?
Well, there's one which is actually Australian, and but its subsidiary is based in Singapore. There are a number of these, and they presented to the President their plans to roll out. And as you know, we have been working with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources on the guidelines for the environmental clearance certificate for floating solar. And then we also have to work with the Laguna Lake Development Authority, or LLDA, insofar as the possessory rights that they have to give they are the ones, since they administer the entire lake. The LLDA has to be the one to issue the possessory rights on where can you put up the what is this? The
Floating solar.
Floating solar.
Floating solar.
And that involves a number of things. No? One, of course, they have to take into account the multiple uses for which the lake is used, and allocate what which areas are suitable for this purpose. So it's not the case that it's only the trip itself where the pledge is going to be made, but you see the welcoming investment climate that the president projects is the one that brings them in, whether or not they are going to make the pledge at the trip itself. So one source of assurance to foreign investors is call for a level playing field in the power sector.
Yeah.
And that's very important for foreign investors. Second, of course, is the stability of the contracts. So whatever contracts that we enter into, and these are usually for long-term contracts, especially in the power sector or in the upstream, that they will be there beyond this administration, and that they will be respected by subsequent administrations.
Are we looking at in the near future contracts with investors for energy?
Well, we have issued quite a good number already of service contracts in the renewable energy sector. So even for offshore wind, where the studies conducted by different international bodies show that the Philippines has a very high potential for offshore wind, and the offshore wind would not be competing for land as onshore wind or onshore solar.
So the solar.
Yes. So that's why the thrust on promoting floating solar, offshore wind is there, because then we can make sure that our power sources will not take away land for productive uses, especially at the time when food
Food sufficiency.
yes is food security is
So it's not going to compromise,
It's a
the-
trade-off.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we have to think of this as well.
Yeah.
And the president is trying to make
balance.
sure that the right balance is there.
Okay.
Before we continue, we have a second break.
We have a second break, and it's quite an interesting discussion. I think we have, a few more questions for you, Secretary. So, again, we'll take a short segment break, and this is brought to you by, again, Angkas,
Angkas.
Beat the Traffic, Bayad
Bayad
Center,
Center.
Bigger, Better, Younger Bayad, and you can Bayad all. Conti's Bake
Conti's
Shop and
Bake Shop.
Restaurant, Delightfully Yours, Globe, Atin ng Mundo, Meralco, Ang Liwanag ng Bukas, the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, and we've got it all for you by SM.
By SM.
Smart, Live More Today, and Union Bank, it starts with you. Tata Consultancy Services.
So,
Chito,
yeah.
your next
Mr.
question for
Secretary, can you share with us the game-changing reforms by opening the RE sector? Full 100%
Foreign ownership.
is that right?
Well, yes, the the Department of Justice had issued the opinion that
We can.
renewable energy can be open to up to 100% foreign ownership. And that's really important because in the case of offshore wind, for example, the investments required,
Capital intensive.
yeah, it is capital intensive, and if we look not only at the production of power from offshore wind, but we look at the production of alternative fuels like green hydrogen.
Oh, that's exotic. Green hydrogen.
Yes.
Oo.
So it's something that's out there right now. The most of the alternative fuels are not yet mature, but at some point the direction is towards production of these. Then we should aim for that. So right, what is happening right now, of course, is that we're looking at, for example, importation of LNG, liquefied natural gas, to help supplement our indigenous gas, and that's needed as a transition fuel because it is one source of power that can help regulate the variability of renewable energy.
But
So-
for the meantime, that would mean higher electricity costs because it's again imported.
Well, that is the case. That's why we are ramping up the exploration activities for indigenous gas. Because if we are, the Philippines is largely underexplored, and the new areas such as those in the Sulu Sea, and that's why it's important that we have also entered into an agreement with the Bangsamoro government, so that both national government and Bangsamoro can issue service contracts in areas that
They
are
can do that.
within
For
their
exploratory.
jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Yes, for exploration. So it's joint, because the whatever is found, the net proceeds will be divided 50-50 by the
50-50.
national government and the
Bangsamoro.
Bangsamoro.
It's a big amount.
Well, it is, but it's provided for in the law itself. So
I see.
the BARM government, I mean the Organic Act for the BARM provides for that sharing, and we entered into agreement to implement that. So we'll move.
Somebody will get rich in Barm.
Well, I'm sure that they will put these things to good use, because the sustainability of BARM has the lowest electrification rate in the entire
right now.
country. It's only around 40%. So if we are to
40%.
if we are to achieve the president's target of having 100% electrification of the country, then we must focus particularly on the BARM areas.
On that exploration as well.
Right.
Into-
Yeah, there's a lot of
Perhaps,
oil.
Chito, we could ask the secretary about the impending. I mean, it's right before our faces. The high electricity cost.
Yeah, it's happening
the-
right now.
Yeah, right. The rates
Right,
because
right.
of, especially in Metro Manila, because of the standoff between the case of Meralco with
Yeah, in
with,
terms of the power supply
Court of
agreement,
Appeal.
it's,
The power supply agreement of
it's kind of
SMC and Meralco.
Well, in that particular case, of course, that's before the courts.
The courts,
and
yeah.
and definitely, I'm sure the Solicitor General, which has clearly stated the government's position on the matter, will be appealing the decision of the Court of Appeals to the Supreme Court. We don't want, of course, the courts to be second guessing the decisions of administrative bodies like the Energy Regulatory Commission, And so, as much as possible, if there is reasonable basis for a decision by an administrative body, then the judiciary will respect that particular decision. So we won't see an impact, an immediate impact of that, but yes, it does affect that decision does affect, of course, prices, because for one, it suspended the fixed rate contracts
rate,
between
yes.
San Miguel and
Meralco.
Meralco. So, but right now, with the issuance of the Court of Appeals decision,
It's a permanent
the-
injunction.
well, but that is subject to
An appeal.
being brought up and reviewed by the Supreme Court itself. So that's what the Solicitor General's office has made clear, that the government opposed the issuance of an
ruling of the
injunction,
Court of
and therefore
Appeals.
would be ready to appeal that, I'm sure.
Is NEA under DOE? No.
Well, the
Yeah.
National Electrification Administration, yes, it is under the
Okay,
department.
so
but
that-
it's an attached agency.
Yeah. So that brings me to my question, Secretary. It's about the prices of electricity in the provinces. That it is more expensive than
The remote
that in
areas.
Metro Manila.
Yeah.
So what has the DOE been doing to address the sentiments and concerns of the consumers in the provinces about the high cost of electricity?
Well, it's important to clarify where the lines of defense lie. The first line of defense is with the electric cooperative itself. And therefore, as consumers and members of the electric cooperative, our consumers must take an active role in the management of the electric cooperatives. They should be electing people who are qualified to run the business. Because in some cases, what we have seen, the Energy Regulatory Commission, which regulates the electric cooperatives and rates in this country, has found out that, one, there has been over-contracting. So there have been electric cooperatives which in the past entered into contracts over and above the needs of their consumers. And all of these are passed on to the consumers. Second, their ability to review, there are provisions for pass-through. That means the cost of fuel is passed through to the consumers depending on the prices of the imported fuel. Now, that's in some cases, electric cooperatives still have to exercise greater responsibility in reviewing their bills. That they don't just automatically pass these on, but they
But I think, Secretary, they have been doing that. But when
no,
you
the
get,
ERC feels otherwise. That they have not been, a number have not been responsible enough. There are others who have been responsible, but the others still have to review meticulously their bills from the generation company. So what the the Energy Regulatory Commission has done is that it has cancelled or disapproved some of these contracts, and therefore they will have to undergo competitive selection.
How
Again.
many?
Yeah.
How many?
Well, there are a
Yeah.
number. I can't recall the exact
it's
number.
more than 100 or less than
Yeah.
100.
Well, because the supply contracts can be several for every distribution utility.
Okay.
So in the case of Meralco, they're able to combine these separate power supply agreements. So they're able to manage them well, and given their size, they're also able to bargain better prices for themselves. So you don't just rely on one supplier, but you rely on several, and then you don't rely only on one source of power, but on several sources. So it's a balancing hydro, geothermal, and coal, and
So,
everything else.
Secretary, this is the advice you can give to consumers in the provinces about complaining about high cost of
cost.
electricity.
Well, we can assure them that the Energy Regulatory Commission is reviewing the power supply contracts, and then the policies that we have to lay down in the case of the Department of Energy are that's why we have a slew of issuances just to make sure that indeed we address these towards bringing down the rates to reasonable levels. But again, I go back to my previous message, which is we have made the policy decision not to subsidize electricity.
Yeah.
So we cannot think of drastically
Telling the distributor.
or telling our people that prices are going to drastically come down, because our dependence on imported fuels is still a major source of weakness.
Okay, so I'll have my last question, Chito. This is about you had a joint agreement with the DPWH, and this is about the poles that have not
Yes,
been blocking the roads. Due to road widening, the poles are still there and has been a hazard to motorists. So there have been several. I mean, I cannot count the number of accidents that happened because of poles in the middle of the road. Now, since there has been a joint agreement with DOE, DPWH, and I think it's
NEA.
NEA. So what has been done? Because based on the last, there was a hearing in Congress, at the Senate, that there's still like thousands of poles across the country. So what happened to these poles? So, ano ba talaga? Who is responsible for this? Aren't the I mean DPWH, when they when they widen a road, I mean they should coordinate with the NEA for the poles, and then what has DOE been doing? So this problem that has been it's not recurrent, it's still there. It has not been solved. Maybe there are poles that have been removed, but there's still many out there.
All right. Now, as you know, they involve right of way acquisition. So you have to transfer them to the existing right of way to another part of the side of the road. And DPWH forms part of the budget of the Department of Public Works and Highways, which then downloads that to the electric cooperatives who will have to relocate. So that one can expect, therefore, the delays in that at that stage. Now, what the NEA administrator Nani Almeida has done is to ask the electric cooperatives to advance the money subject to reimbursement to the by the Department of Public Works and Highways.
And relocate the poles.
But as you know, again, it entails cost. So that means that electric co-ops will take up the costs first and then wait for reimbursement. And how can the electric co-ops fund that? It will have to. So these are the things that we need to work on to improve. There are no overnight solutions, and government is aware of the problem, and that's why it's trying to address this in various ways.
Do the public expect that these poles in the middle of the road be removed by like 2 years from now?
Well, if I had a magic wand, I'll remove them now, right? But that's why assuring you that we can actually move them within a certain time frame is dependent on a number of factors.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what is this? Unfortunately, we can't. If it were a case where the budget is available from day one, and then the right of way is also available from day one, then the transfer can be made as
So
easily as
it's immediately sold.
possible. Right.
All right.
So but we will continue to work at it and update our people on these things. But before I forget, I want to appeal. You described me as a lifeliner before, right?
Yeah, that's what I
But
read.
there have been improvements. The lifeline rates are now better targeted. The subsidy, we subsidize each other. So the changes that Congress has introduced is that, for example, those who live in condominiums and subdivisions are disqualified from availing of
So you do not
the
qualify
lifeline
anymore.
rates, even if you consume, like in the Meralco area, below 100 kilowatt hours. So, but unfortunately, right now, even those who are qualified, like the beneficiaries under the 4-piece program,
Yeah.
out of the 4.2 million or so who are qualified, we've had applications only from around 11,000. And so we're appealing to everybody, to including particularly the local government units, to help these the ones who ought actually to benefit from these subsidies, to register themselves. Otherwise, they will see a sharp increase in their electricity.
So we cannot, can we avail of that, Chito?
If you live in a
Yeah. So anyway, Secretary, I mean, it has been an enlightening discussion with you. And can we have your last words?
Well, I just want to appeal to all of our people and our officials, whether at the national and local level, that we've got to come together in order to address the power needs of the country. Lately, the issues that have been presented to us are delays associated at the local or community level, including issuance of permits, timeliness there. We need to be able to see ourselves as part of the greater whole. So when we talk about transmission lines, distribution lines that need to be constructed, we help the country as a whole whenever we try to facilitate these things in terms of permitting or other requirements. So if we do the opposite, then we are hurting ourselves. Nobody else. So let's hope that we can come together and assure ourselves of adequate supply at affordable prices.
Of course, that's the most important. So
Affordable
adequate
prices.
and affordable. So thank you so much, Secretary, for your time, for being with us.
It's been an honor.
It's an honor to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Lee and Chito.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Magandang umaga mga katribu at Wednesday na naman, 26th of July. This is another episode of Daily Tribune's Straight Talk, our digital show. Ito yung mga issues na may tumatama sa sikmura ng taong bayan. No? And for this episode, we have a very special guest in the person of Mr. Michael Ted Macapagal. No? He is recently appointed as the chairman of the Philippine National Railways or PNR.
Oh.
So yung mga sumasakay ng PNR train, si Mr. Michael Ted Macapagal ang kumbaga sa big boss ng operation ng PNR.
When you say PNR,
Yes, okay.
now it's Chairman Michael Ted Macapagal. And yes, John, today is a special episode. Ako po ang inyong katribo, si Chinky Mangkukang. Magandang umaga po. And syempre, we are live in Facebook page and Tribune Now YouTube channel. So, wag na nating patagalin. John, I'm so excited na makasama natin ngayon. Welcome to Straight Talk, our chairman, PNR chairman, Michael Ted Macapagal.
Welcome po sir sa Straight Talk.
Salamat po. I want to, gusto ko lang bumate, ano? So, let's say hello to all of our viewers and all of our listeners. I understand we're live or we're going to be international also, no?
Yes, sir.
So sa mga kababayan natin, mga Pilipino sa Pilipinas and abroad, magandang araw po. We have a lot of things that we needed to convey to you today. And sana, you know, lahat po itong mga information na ito, we could simplify it so that it will be understood by everyone, especially our riding public.
Mga katribo, bago natin gisahin ng mga tanong natin.
Gisahin,
It's a joke. Bago natin alamin ang mahabang experience ng ating minamahal na chairman ng PNR, alamin muna natin, sino ba si Michael Ted Macapagal?
Parang
Can you tell us
ginigisa niyo
something?
na ako.
Can you tell us something about your brief
specifically,
background lang po?
Sure.
Why have you been called Super Mike?
That's my nickname po in Olonga po. Kasi when I was young, no, nung bata ho ako, my father was once mayor of Olonga po. So we were in politics. And siguro favorite ko rin na cartoon character or superhero, si Superman. Yung mga kalaro ko, they started calling me Super Mike.
Okay.
We campaigned for my dad when I was young. My dad lost and he retired from public service. That's when I went to the States. Matagal po ako sa States, nanirahan. Nag-aral din po tayo sa States. And it is in the States where I became a corporate executive for one of the largest title insurance companies in the whole world. It's called Stewart Title.
All right.
Pero alam po ninyo, when I was in the States, parang in all the years that I was there, parang on the back of my mind, I wanted to come back. I wanted to, siguro yung inumpisahan ng dad ko or yung hindi niya natapos gawin, I wanted to continue or to build on that and maybe to help the country also in my own humble way. So, yun po ang dahilan why I returned and why I am here
Yes,
back in public service.
I think insofar as PNR is concerned, you would dedicate and to, you know, with this big project that DOTR is undertaking. Mamaya pag-uusapan natin yan
Yes, sir.
with more details
exciting
and
na eh.
along with the good news with regards to this very big project. Of course, there are some, you know, birth
Humps
pains
and
that we
dumps.
will have to
Totoo yan.
Humps and bumps.
I want to say that I'm fortunate to have joined the PNR in this momentous time in our history. Kasi mamaya pag-uusapan natin yung mga projects ng PNR. And I want to say na it's mind-boggling. It's really I'm excited to announce it to our riding public na in 6 years from now, pag natapos po ang lahat ng projects ng PNR, the Philippines will look very, very different. Our traffic condition will have improved when these trains are all completed and when these projects are all up and running na. So, pag-usapan po natin.
Yeah, Chairman, you
Ma'am,
have a
please.
long service, public service experience. prior to your stint now in PNR.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
before that, can you inform our katribo? I-share mo naman sa kanila.
Okay,
Sino si Michael Ted
Michael Ted,
Macapagal
yeah.
before joining PNR?
Okay, during the time of Madam Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, no? I
Ano
was
po pala ang relasyon ninyo kay Madam
she's
Macapagal?
my tita,
Sabi
we're
ko na.
related.
Tama kayo mga katribo.
I'm proud no to say that she's my I think my most intelligent and most beautiful tita in the whole of the world. I want that for the record. But anyway, during her time, I was chairman of a political party called CAPI in Olongapo City and Zambales. No? During the time of Duterte, the former president appointed me president of PDP Laban for Olongapo City chapter also. Subsequently, when he won, I was appointed director of the Clark Development Authority, where I served for about a year and a half. And then after the midterm elections of 2019, I believe it was, he appointed me to the Philippine National Oil Company as also a director. So in the 6 years po of President Duterte, I had experience in boardroom dynamics. So yun yung 6 na taon. And I also did a stint, a brief stint as director also for Gulf Oil Philippines.
All right.
It's a private company. Yeah.
Okay, so sir, we go straight to the trains. No?
Yeah.
So what are these, projects that you've been talking about? With us, off-cam kanina. Kasi you were excited about it, and I think it's time that you share it with our
Sige po,
contributors.
maraming salamat for giving me this opportunity. Nung time po ni dating Pangulong Duterte, back in 2019 or 2020, na-conceive po yung North-South Commuter Railway Project. No? The trains will start from Clark. It will go from Clark to Pampanga, Pampanga to Bulacan, Bulacan to Metro Manila, around Metro Manila, no? And all the way south to Calamba, Laguna. In fact, it doesn't stop there. From Calamba all the way to the last town of Sorsogon, Bicol region na po yan. No? Yun lang, in 2019, at the height of the pandemic, of course, understandably, the resources of the government was moved from these projects that was conceived at that time backed up by China, no, to the pandemic response. So, natulog muna po yung mga projects na yan in the later years ni President Duterte. And then come, of course, the new president, si Ferdinand Bongbong Romualdez Marcos Jr., who I like to call the father of the railway system of the country, because it is under his leadership that he continued, improved, and took it head on, and took it upon himself really, to complete and to tell everybody, lahat po ng ahensya, especially the DOTR, to make sure that this is completed within the 6 years of his term. So pag-upo po niya, nung in-appoint niya na secretary ng DOTR, si Secretary Jimmy Bautista, he made the marching order to implement his vision for the railway system of the country. And tamang-tama naman. We have a very good secretary, who came from the private sector,
Alright.
dati yatang presidente ng PAL, si Secretary Jimmy.
Yes.
And it was really, if you think about it, there's no better person to implement the president's vision than someone who has the backing, the respect, and the support, of the business community. Kasi the government cannot do this alone. You need private sector cooperation or participation. And this is precisely what Secretary Bautista did. He built a group of people to look into the entire railway industry. Tapos sa PNR nga, inilagay po yung NSCR project na yan.
Yes, sir. So, from end to end, this would be,
Mahaba.
ano
From-
yung dulot-dulo nito?
Ang umpisa ho niyan, Clark.
Okay.
From Clark Airport, underground yan.
All right.
Tapos, aakyat. No? Pag akyat, elevated po yan. Elevated railway. No? All the way to Pampanga, Bulacan. Sa Metro Manila ho, merong at ground at merong bababa at
Okay.
merong ding elevated.
Ba?
Pabalik sa Alabang. Oo, from Alabang pupunta ng Calamba, Laguna. So from Clark to Calamba, Laguna yan. 147 kilometer stretch.
And
Ang haba po niyan.
travel would be around,
Well,
wala pang time and motion.
alam
pero,
po ninyo, pag binilang ninyo yung traffic, no? From Clark to Calamba, Laguna, easily mga 8 hours drive po yan. No? Pero, of course, it's estimated at 4 hours. But easily, kung may traffic, kakain pa kayo, hihinto pa kayo, 6 to 8 hours drive po yan. But by train, this is estimated, sabi nga ni Presidente in his SONA yesterday, no? Sabi niya from 4 hours to 2 hours, no? Yun yung express train, no? But yung kasi 35 stations po yan eh.
Okay.
From Clark all the way to Calamba. So hihinto po yan in all the 35 stations. So estimated time maybe nasa 3 to 4 hours all the way na to Calamba, Laguna with all the stoppage in the different stations.
all right. Saka ano yun, consistent yun. You can,
You can
Tuloy-tuloy
plan
po
your
yun. Yes.
schedule. You can say that,
Oho.
you can plan around the
Yes, at saka you are in comfort and in safety. Ito pong mga trains na to, by the way, hindi po ito yung mga diesel locomotive trains na ginagamit natin ngayon na pag dumadaan, di ba yung Home Along the Riles, yung the movie, no? Yumuyuga, yung mga bahay, umuuga, no? These are different. These are electric trains, And this is at par, advanced and at par with world standards. So, elevated electric trains, procure from Japan. So, these are all gagamitin ko na yung word ng mga millennials, high-tech po yan. And pag dumating po yan at sumakay ang mga kababayan natin, they are in comfort, safety, and more importantly, pwedeng gumawa ng assignment sa tren, pwedeng magbasa ng dyaryo. Wala na pala nagbabasa ng dyaryo.
Meron.
Marami
Pwedeng
pa rin.
mag-Facebook.
Marami pa.
Marami pa rin
Malamang
nagbabasa.
tayo dalawa
Lalo
nagbabasa.
na-
Mga old school.
Oo. But you can do whatever you want, at the luxury of riding on a train na safe and in comfort, di ba?
Yes,
That's why.
so I would imagine that with this train system, that the Clark Airport would get more traffic
Yes.
because
oo.
it would be easier for people in Manila
To back and forth.
to travel via Clark.
Clark.
no?
Yes,
So,
sir. Actually, the two biggest help, ang impact nito na mafe-feel agad ng mga kababayan natin is in number one, traffic. Makikita po na maiibsan ka agad yung traffic. Ang sabi nga nila, ang traffic daw ng Pilipinas or sa Metro Manila alone, ang nawawala sa daily traffic problems ng Metro Manila is to the billions. Di ba?
Actually, it's